Have you ever questioned how intimacy and self-discovery evolve as we age? In this video, we delve into the heartfelt journeys of Marcos, Dona Esperanza, Don Anselmo, and Sofia as they navigate the complexities of sexuality in their golden years. Stay with us to uncover inspiring stories that challenge societal norms and reveal the timeless nature of desire. You will gain profound insights into self-acceptance, the importance of embracing one's own needs, and how self-love can transform your perspective at any stage of life. Don't miss out on these powerful narratives that could redefine how you view aging and intimacy. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. Marco sat at the edge of his seat, his thoughts heavy and clouded with worry. He had been grappling with some deeply personal issues, thoughts that had kept him awake at night, churning inside his mind without resolution. His heart felt a little too full, burdened with questions he had been too embarrassed to ask anyone before. But today, something inside him urged him to find the courage. Gathering himself, he nervously approached Dona Esperanza, a woman known for her wisdom, her nurturing spirit, and the calm way she always seemed to make others feel seen and understood. He hesitated for a moment, swallowing his discomfort, but then the words tumbled out haltingly. "Dona Esperanza, may I ask you something personal?" His face flushed and his hands fidgeted, betraying the nerves he couldn't quite conceal. He was unsure of how she would react, how anyone might react, to the question that had been gnawing at him. "What do you think about masturbation in old age?" Dona Esperanza, with her gentle eyes that sparkle with years of lived experience, looked at him for a moment, and then, as if to dissolve any lingering awkwardness, she gave him a warm, understanding smile. Her entire presence seemed to envelop him with the kind of comfort one might find in the embrace of an old friend. She reached out, lightly placing a hand on his arm, signaling that it was perfectly fine to talk about such things, that no topic was off limits. "Oh, dear Marcos," she began softly, her voice full of affection and the steady calm of someone who had walked through life's many seasons. "You're not alone in feeling unsure or even embarrassed about these things. When I reached 70, I found myself grappling with similar thoughts. My body, once full of energy and vigor, had begun to change in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. My children were adults, off living their own lives, and my grandchildren were starting to have families of their own. And here I was, alone in my house, surrounded by silence. For the first time in a long while, I had time to think, time to reflect, and time to question." Her voice softened as she continued, her gaze distant, as if she were recalling her journey from a place deep within her memories. "It was during those quiet moments that I began to question my desires and needs. Could a woman of my age still have such feelings? Was it appropriate to even think about intimacy at 70? I'll admit, at first, I was filled with shame. The very idea seemed improper, perhaps even indulgent. I'd spent my life caring for others, my children and my family, always putting their needs before my own. But now, in the solitude of my home, I was faced with my humanity, my desires that I had long buried. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me." She glanced at Marcos, her eyes filled with empathy, understanding the discomfort he must have felt in asking her such a personal question. "I wondered, could I still have these desires at my age? Was it wrong to want that kind of connection with myself, especially now that I was older?" The shame I felt was overwhelming at times. I was embarrassed to even think about my own body in that way. But there was also a part of me that longed for understanding, for some kind of acceptance, both from myself and from the world around me. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she relayed the turning point in her journey. "I knew I couldn't carry that shame forever, so I did something I had never done before. I sought advice. I spoke to my doctor, and it was one of the most liberating conversations of my life. My doctor was kind and respectful, and spoke with such tenderness. She explained to me that sexuality isn't confined to youth. It doesn't just disappear when we grow older. It's a natural part of being human, a part of our essence that endures even as our bodies change. There was no shame in feeling what I felt, she assured me. And in that moment, something shifted within me. It was as if a weight I had been carrying for years had been gently lifted. Dona Esperanza smiled softly, the memory of that conversation bringing her a deep sense of peace. With that newfound understanding, I began to explore my intimacy in a way that I never had before. But I'll tell you, Marcos, it wasn't easy at first. There were so many doubts, so many questions. I didn't know if what I was doing was right, or if it was even necessary. But slowly, as I allowed myself the space to connect with my body, I discovered something unexpected. Masturbation, far from being something to be ashamed of, became a source of comfort, a way to care for myself in ways I had never known. It wasn't just about pleasure, though that was certainly part of it. It was about honoring my body, my spirit, and my needs. Her words hung in the air, rich with the depth of her lived experience. In those quiet moments of solitude, I found something I hadn't known I was missing, a deep connection with myself. The more I embraced this practice, the more I began to understand that it wasn't just a physical act. It was a moment of profound self-care, a way to reconnect with my body in a loving, respectful way. And the effects were immediate. I noticed that my anxiety, which had been creeping into my life in unexpected ways, began to melt away. I felt calmer and more at peace with myself. I started sleeping better, my mind quieter and my heart lighter. She paused, her voice filled with a quiet reverence as she reflected on what she had learned. But it was more than that, Marcos. Masturbation helped me see myself in a different light. I looked at my body, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't see the wrinkles, the sagging skin, or the signs of aging as something to be ashamed of. No, I began to see them as something beautiful, as markers of a life well lived, a life full of experiences, love, loss, and everything in between. I realized that my body had carried me through so much, and it deserved love and care, just as much as it did when I was younger. Dona Esperanza's eyes glistened as she looked at Marcos, her smile filled with warmth and understanding. So, you see, my dear, there is nothing to fear and certainly nothing to be ashamed of. Our desires, our need for intimacy, don't disappear with age. They evolve, they change, but they are always a part of us. And caring for those needs, nurturing them, is a way of loving ourselves, of embracing who we are at every stage of life. Marcos listened, his heart lighter, the burden of his embarrassment slowly fading away. Dona Esperanza's words had touched him deeply, offering him not only wisdom, but also a sense of comfort and acceptance he hadn't known he needed. In that moment, he realized that the journey of self-discovery and self-acceptance doesn't end as we grow older. It continues, full of new experiences, new lessons, and above all, new ways to connect with ourselves and the world around us. Additionally, this journey into self-discovery and intimacy taught me one of the most profound lessons of my life, the importance of self-compassion and respect for oneself. You see, Marcos, as I explored this side of myself, I realized that pleasure has no age limit and that it is not something reserved only for the young. It is a right that we all possess at any stage of life, to embrace and enjoy our bodies in a way that is both healthy and respectful. There is a deep wisdom and understanding that our desires do not fade with age. They simply evolve. Learning to nurture those desires, to listen to our bodies and honor them, is an act of love and respect that we owe ourselves. Of course, not everyone around me understood this perspective. Some judged me, who saw my openness about such matters as scandalous, even shameful. People whispered behind my back, raised eyebrows, and passed judgment as if they had the authority to define what was appropriate for someone my age. Some even criticized me openly, questioning my morals, as if I were doing something wrong. But I stood firm, rooted in the conviction that sexuality, just like any other aspect of life, is an essential part of being human. And it belongs to us, not to society's narrow definitions of what is acceptable. What mattered most, Marcos, was how I felt about myself. In the end, the only person who must live with the consequences of your choices is you. And I chose to live in a way that was true to myself, without shame, without fear, and without bowing to the pressures of what others thought I should be. I discovered a sense of freedom in that choice, a profound liberation. It was as if, in accepting my desires, I was also accepting all of who I am, my body, my spirit, my history, and that acceptance allowed me to live with more joy, more confidence, and more peace. So, my dear Marcos, do not let yourself be weighed down by embarrassment or guilt over your desires. Masturbation, whether in old age or any other stage of life, can be a beautiful source of well-being, self-knowledge, and connection with yourself. It is a form of self-care, one that can help you understand your body and its needs, and that can bring you comfort and peace. Listen to what your body is telling you, respect its signals, and allow yourself to enjoy the pleasures that life still offers you. There is no shame in seeking joy and comfort in your skin. The most important thing is that you honor your journey, in whatever form it takes. Marco sat in silence, absorbing every word from Dona Esperanza, his heart and mind slowly opening to the wisdom she had shared. He felt a deep sense of relief, as if a weight he had carried for so long was finally being lifted. Her words had not only offered him clarity, but had also permitted him to accept himself fully. From that day on, he understood that life and sexuality are deeply personal and unique journeys. And most importantly, he learned that self-care, self-respect, and the freedom to explore one's desires are fundamental at every stage of life. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment too below to let me know that you are still here with me. In the same peaceful town, another story of self-discovery was unfolding. Don Anselmo, a 75-year-old man known for his sharp wit and infectious sense of humor, was beloved by everyone. He had a knack for storytelling, spinning tales that left his listeners both entertained and reflecting on the deeper meanings of life. One afternoon, as he sat sipping his coffee in the sunlit plaza, he was approached by Sophia, a childhood friend whose company he had always cherished. Sophia sat down beside him, her face tinged with a blush that hinted at the internal struggle she had been grappling with. After a few moments of small talk, she took a deep breath and, with a mixture of vulnerability and hesitation, confessed to Don Anselmo that she had been feeling a growing sense of shame and confusion about her sexuality in old age. The thought had plagued her for months, leaving her feeling isolated and unsure of whom to turn to. With her voice barely above a whisper, she asked him, "Anselmo, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what do you think about masturbation at our age? Is it wrong to still have these feelings?" Don Anselmo's eyes twinkled as he looked at his old friend. He could see how much it had taken for her to ask such a personal question, and he felt nothing but compassion for her. With his characteristic warmth and understanding, he offered her a kind smile. "Oh, Sophia," he began, his tone gentle and reassuring. "There is nothing to be ashamed of. I can tell you, from my own experience, that our desires do not simply disappear as we age. They change, yes, but they are still very much a part of who we are." He leaned back in his chair, gazing out over the plaza as he gathered his thoughts. "You know, when I reached my 70s, I started to think about these things too. Like you, I wondered if it was appropriate for someone my age to still have such desires. I questioned whether it was something I should suppress or hide. But then I realized, why should I? Just because we're older doesn't mean we stop being human. Our bodies still crave connection, and our hearts still long for closeness, even if that closeness comes in the form of self-care." Sophia listened intently as Don Anselmo continued, her initial embarrassment beginning to melt away. "I'll tell you something, Sophia," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "There's nothing wrong with listening to your body and giving it what it needs. Masturbation can be a healthy, positive part of life, no matter your age. It's about honoring yourself, about taking care of your well-being. There's nothing to feel guilty about, and certainly nothing to be ashamed of. He paused for a moment, looking her directly in the eyes. What matters most, my dear friend, is how you feel about yourself. Don't let the judgments of others, or even your doubts, cloud the fact that you are deserving of pleasure, joy, and peace. At the end of the day, it's your life, your body, and your journey. Embrace it with love and respect. Sophia smiled, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. Don Anselmo's words had given her the reassurance she so desperately needed. In that moment, she realized that the journey of self-acceptance was not something bound by age. It was something to be nurtured throughout life. From that day on, both Marcos and Sophia carried with them the wisdom of their elders. They learned that life, in all its complexity, continues to offer growth opportunities, joy, and connection with oneself. They understood that self-care and self-respect are not just for the young, but are essential at every stage of life. Sophia, my dear friend, I completely understand the concerns you're carrying. We've grown up in a world where society often teaches us that sexuality is something reserved for the young, as if it has an expiration date. But in truth, the reality couldn't be more different. Let me share something personal with you, something I haven't spoken about much. A few years ago, after my wife passed away, I was swallowed by an immense and overwhelming loneliness. The house felt too quiet, the days too long, and the nights were the hardest. My children had their own lives, living far away, and while they visited now and then, most of my time was spent in solitude. It was during those lonely days that I began to reflect on my own emotional and physical well-being. I remembered conversations from my youth, those candid, carefree talks with friends about the importance of staying connected, not only with others but with ourselves as well. In the back of my mind, I wondered if it was possible to nurture that kind of connection again, even at my age. At first, the thought of masturbation felt uncomfortable, almost like a betrayal of the dignity society had expected of me. I believed that those desires should have long since faded. Wasn't I too old to even think about such things? But the more I sat with those thoughts, the more I realized how flawed they were. The need for intimacy, for pleasure, doesn't simply vanish as we grow older. It's part of who we are, part of being human. Age doesn't erase those desires. It only transforms them. One night, after a particularly long and difficult day, I made a decision. I chose to permit myself to explore those feelings. It felt strange at first, almost awkward. My movements were unsure, and I was self-conscious in a way I hadn't been in years. But slowly, as the moments passed, I began to relax. I allowed myself to fully embrace the experience without guilt or hesitation. And what I discovered surprised me. It wasn't just about physical pleasure. There was a sense of liberation, a feeling of peace that washed over me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Over time, I realized that this practice, far from being something to be ashamed of, was helping me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Masturbation became a way to manage my stress, a way to soothe my anxieties, to feel at ease in my skin again. I started sleeping better, my mind quieter as I drifted off. And perhaps most importantly, it allowed me to reconnect with my body in a way I hadn't done in years. I began to accept the changes that come with aging, the wrinkles, the slower pace, the aches and pains, with more grace. This practice wasn't just about pleasure. It was about nurturing myself, about recognizing that even in old age, I deserve to feel good, to feel whole. Masturbation in old age taught me one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned. Pleasure has no age. Our bodies, no matter how much they change, still deserve to be cared for and loved. It reminded me to be kind to myself and to practice self-compassion. In a world that often pushes us to bury our desires, especially as we grow older, it's vital to honor those parts of ourselves without guilt or shame. Yes, there are always those who don't understand and who judge from the outside, but I've come to realize that their opinions hold no power over my sense of self. What truly matters, Sophia, is how we feel about ourselves. Life is far too short to live in fear or regret. to deny ourselves the simple joys that come from knowing and loving who we are inside and out. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Sophia listened intently, her heart warmed by Don Anselmo's reassuring words. His voice, so full of kindness and understanding, seemed to dissolve the lingering doubts and fears that had weighed her down for so long. As he spoke, she began to realize that her feelings, her desires, were not something to be hidden or suppressed, but rather an integral part of who she was, a part deserving of care, respect, and love. She understood, perhaps for the first time, that sexuality was not confined to youth, nor did it fade with age. It was, in fact, a lifelong companion, as natural and necessary as any other form of self-care. At that moment, Sophia felt a sense of relief, like a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Don Anselmo's words had given her permission to embrace her own body, to listen to its needs without judgment, and to acknowledge the deep connection between physical and emotional well-being. She realized that maintaining this connection wasn't selfish or inappropriate, but a way to nurture her spirit, to honor her journey through life with compassion and grace. From that day forward, Sophia made a quiet vow to herself. She would no longer allow the whispers of societal expectations or the judgments of others to dictate how she felt about her own body. Instead, she would live with more self-compassion and more self-love, following the wise and gentle example set by her old friend. She would listen to her body with patience and understanding, caring for it in the way it deserved, not just out of necessity, but out of love for herself. And so, as the days turned into weeks, Sophia began to notice a change in the way she moved through life. There was a newfound sense of peace in her heart, a quiet confidence in the way she carried herself. She approached each day with a deeper awareness of her worth, taking time to appreciate the small pleasures that life still had to offer her. In her moments of solitude, she felt more connected to herself, more accepting of the changes that came with age, and more in tune with the beauty that still existed within her. Through this journey of self-compassion, Sophia discovered that love for oneself is, perhaps, the greatest love of all. It transcends age, defies the limitations of time, and allows us to live fully, embracing every part of who we are without fear or shame. And in that truth, she found a new kind of freedom, a freedom to live with joy, dignity, and the quiet assurance that she, too, deserved all the pleasures that life had to offer, no matter her age. As we reflect on the powerful conversation between Don Anselmo and Sophia, we are reminded that self-compassion, self-love, and the acceptance of our desires are vital at every stage of life. What have you learned from their stories? We would love to hear from you. What is one thing you've learned today that you will bring into practice in your own life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on more thought-provoking and inspiring content. Thank you for watching.